Welcome, and thanks for stopping by. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to our podcast on one of your favorite platforms, I'm glad you're here. At this time, I would like to thank our partners and sponsors for their dedication to helping the show to grow. We cannot do what we do without their help. Hey everybody, you've reached the Millennium Beat. I am so glad you're here. Today I have Dave Ebert. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and talk about what's going on up here in Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago. That's one city I've never been to. I've been to Boston, I've been up Texas, I've been to, a lot of down the East Coast, but never to Chicago. So you're out there in Crest Hill, which is right near, is a suburb of Chicago?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
That's just cool. Barely out of the shadow of the Sears Tower. And I am a traditionalist, so it'll always be the Sears Tower, no matter how many times they try to rename it.
And now, is it called the Sears Tower right now, or is it something else?
A company bought the rights to the property. It's now called the Willis Tower. Yeah. They're a British insurance company, I think. Okay. So it's like, no, it's always going to be the Sears Tower. I don't care what you do.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons why people might not recognize it's Sears, the younger they are, the less they know what Sears is.
Right.
Sears and Roebuck,
It's especially you'll blow somebody's mind if you start talking about the Sears catalog and Sears Roebuck catalog. So, yeah, I'm dating myself a little bit for those that are listening. But look in your history books. You'll see about Sears and Roebuck and Montgomery Ward and the history of when things were great.
Oh yeah, things have changed a lot. I mean, it's like funny you talk. I mean, I remember I'm old enough. I just turned 61, and I don't have age is age. I know people from 13 years old and up. I mean, I do know some of younger people, but they're too much of a kid. Usually around 13 they start getting a little bit better. But there's things like I remember we had AM/FM radio only right after I was born, but we only had AM radio when I started. Wow, that really dates me. I mean, I mean, I remember 8-track tapes. I even remember CDs, which today everything has got away from that. Everything is online. Everything is online. So Dave, tell me a little bit about yourself. Were you born in Crest Hill or Chicago, or where were you born in? We'll hear about a little bit about little Dave.
Well, I never was little Dave. I was born at about 10 pounds. So I was born in Chicago and grew up in southwestern Virginia down in the Appalachian Mountains.
Okay.
My dad was a Vietnam veteran, and when I was about 4 or 5 years old, he started getting the after effects of the Agent Orange chemical. So his health declined very quickly. And we moved to a slower paced lifestyle in the South to get him out of the city. And he turned a 6-month prognosis into 22 years. So it was a good choice. And so moving down, I was young, but the South really just never was home. So eventually I moved back up here to Chicago because this is home, for better, for worse. I love the Cubs, love the Bears, no matter how many times they break my heart and can't figure out what to do at quarterback. Love the Bulls. Of course, right as I'm growing up, Michael Jordan, winning 6 out of 8 years, and LeBron will never be the GOAT because there is a GOAT. It's Michael.
Okay.
But yeah.
I get this question I was thinking of when you're talking about there was a TV show that was based, out of, I can remember the stadium and stuff like that. Do you remember what TV show that was?
Based out of the Chicago Stadium?
Yeah, that they showed it. Was it something like, I don't know. It was a sitcom or something out of Chicago, but it was years ago, probably back 70s or 80s. But yeah, I don't remember it. I just remember the stadium. And on Cubs, I've heard of it. I live in Florida now. That's where my studio office is in Florida, in Deltona, outside of outside of Daytona and outside of Orlando. I'm in the middle. But I'm from Boston. If you can't tell my accent, I'm a Bostonian. It's like where you park your car.
Yeah.
So I grew up there in New England. I lived up there for about 31 years, and now I've been down here ever since. So I always was saying that it was coming up this summer that I would have been here longer than there. But I redid the math, and the math didn't add up. So I'm a little bit wrong. It would be like another year or so, and then I'll be here longer than them. So you going back to your story, you said you were born in Chicago, but then you moved down south, and then you moved back to Chicago. So,
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that life, what it was like the second time when you were back up in that area that you are in now.
Sure. So I, having grown up in the South, and never feeling at home, there's a bit of an identity thing there.
Okay.
And growing up, I ended up being in a deep depression for many years.
Oh, wow.
And when I finally turned my life over to the Lord and started pursuing Jesus seriously, he led me back home to Illinois to use my passions. And one of my passions is comedy, because I used to use comedy as a way to mask the depression I was going through. And now I'm using it as a way to minister to others who need a laugh. They need to realize, they need the break from the burdens of life. Mm-hmm. And God showed me that using comedy as a mask was using comedy was what he wanted me to do. Mm-hmm. But he needed to change the why. Instead of hiding myself and trying to use that as a mask, it's now a way to bring people to him, to show that there's a hope and there's more to this life than what we see right in front of us. Okay. And when I finally turned my life over to him, he opened the door for me to move out of West Virginia, because I was saying West Virginia, they kind of intermingle because they're right along the border. And so I moved back to Chicago, ended up living on my sister's couch for a couple of years, met my wife, and now I'm on her couch ever since. But the whole...
yeah, that's funny.
The whole thing is, God is allowing me to use those years of depression and the comedy that I developed, and he's now redeeming all that lost time to minister to people and to help people who are hurting and lost and need to know that there's a Father that loves them.
Mm-hmm. So when you say use comedy as a ministry point and stuff like that, where do you do that? Do you do stand-up comedy? Do you do churches that you go and then you speak and you do comedy? Or tell me a little bit about that. How do you do that? Or how would I see you in a sense?
Okay, one of the biggest things we do is I have an improv team, and we perform at a lot of churches and church events with just clean comedy that's accessible for all ages. Because as I'm sure you know that, just because it says comedy doesn't necessarily mean you can bring the whole family. There's a lot of comedy that I would be embarrassed to listen to, much less try to bring the family to. Right. But we do it so that whether you're a grandkid, a great grandkid, or a great grandmother, you can come together, laugh, enjoy it, and we truly believe that laughter is a gift from God to help us deal with the stresses of life, because I don't care how good your life is, you're going to have a little bit of stress. You hear all about Taylor Swift and Kelsey. They've got everything in the world at their fingertips, but they still have to deal with stress. Oh. And so it doesn't matter where you're at in life. There's some things that you can laugh off, and we do that around the Chicagoland area. We also do a lot of fundraisers. one of our biggest causes is Royal Family Kids Camp, which is a camp for foster kids. And every year we do about 5 different fundraisers to help send foster kids to a summer camp where they're treated like kids, not just a number in the system.
Okay.
And so that's one of our passions. And outside of performing, for the last 5.5 years, I've been using improv to help women who have survived sex and human trafficking, help them in their recovery. Because once you escape that lifestyle, and many people saw the movie Sound of Freedom, once you escape that lifestyle, there's still an immense battle ahead of you because you've got to rebuild your life. Many, especially if they're adults, many of them leave that lifestyle with a record because the courts and many of the cops don't care why they're on the corner and why they're doing the things that they're doing. They just know that they are doing it, and therefore, they got to step in. They got to prosecute. And so many of these women have drug charges, prostitution charges, and they're deemed as unfit parents. And so they're fighting the courts. They're fighting to get housing. They're fighting to get jobs. And so, just because they left, that doesn't mean the battle is over. And since 2018, we've been able to go in and work alongside organizations that help these survivors get back up on their feet. And we use comedy as a way to help them heal, tears down the walls that they've built in order to survive, and also to break cause a paradigm shift. Because frankly, it's guys that kind of look like me that have been their Johns, their customers that have put them through years of literal hell. And so I'm coming in as somebody that is a healthy guy that's happily married, and I'm able to just break the paradigm to where they can now start to realize that, okay, not every man is out to hurt me. Not every man is out to use me and abuse me. There are decent men. And that's not, to me, I'm not tooting my own horn saying I'm this great guy. It's just, God is using me, and he's redeeming all those lost years to depression that I had. And he's now using it as a way to help others avoid those pitfalls.
Well, one of the things we were talking about a little earlier in our conversation about being a prisoner, I mean, they were a prisoner of sex trafficking, and then they escape, or that you get them and you recover them and stuff like that. And it's like a lot of things is you might be escaped or you've gone out of the system, but a lot of times you're still trapped in your mind, in your brain, your own self. So they need to you need to help them get over that too, is where they're not a prisoner. Even though they're free, they can walk the country, walk the world, but they have to get free inside their head. And that's a lot where Christianity comes in, and it can help them do that. And then you use your comedy it's kind of like I don't know how to use what analogy to use other than it's a stepping stone. It gets them opened up a little bit, because they can laugh and they can have fun and stuff like that. So you do all that kind of stuff. So it's cool. I'm glad to hear that.
It's very disarming. Because they, as part of the programs that they're in, they go through the traditional therapy with the psychiatrist and everything, trying to deal with the how does that make you feel, or all these different things that are very hard and burdensome. Then we come in a couple times a month where it's fun, it's free, it's creative, and it's like play-based learning for kids in school, that they're learning while they're playing, and they're able to find, and we're able to plant seeds of the gospel in a very disarming way. It's not us preaching and saying, oh, you just need to give it to God, you don't have enough faith. No, it's just, hey, we're doing this, it's fun, God loves you, and we're focusing on hope this week, and the Bible tells us this about hope, and it's such a blessing to see these women who come in carrying the burdens of the world literally be transformed from somebody just hunched over, arms crossed, looking like they're ready to just explode on somebody, to laughing like a little girl again. Because many of these women, the first time that they were sold was by their parents or by a relative at 8, 9, 10 years old, because they were the only currency they had to buy drugs. And instead of having, $500 cash to get what they needed, here, take my 9-year-old for an hour. And it sounds very brutal, because it is brutal. And it's happening not just in Chicago, it's happening in the suburbs, it's happening across the U.S. We call ourselves the land of the free, but there are still a lot of slaves. Like you said, they're slaves in the mind as much as they are physically, because many traffickers, it's not that they're being trafficked and hidden in a warehouse somewhere. Many of the survivors, they come from places where they were still living their life. They would still go to the store. The kids, they still go to school. But it's what happens outside the public view is where the torture comes in. And the traffickers are excellent at manipulation and convincing these victims to hide it so that they don't lose what they know in exchange for the world that they don't know. Because they don't know who they can trust. They don't know where they can go. And so there's no incentive to really leave, because you don't know who you can go to.
Right. I'm thinking also, too, from past interviews that I've done professionally and also from my shows, sometimes the sex trafficker grabs a girl and it's a family. And then you're right, she does go home. And this trafficker says, hey, I know where you live. I know you have a sister. I know you have a brother. If you tell or you do something that's not what I want you to do, I'm going to get them. I'm going to either kill them, or I'm going to whatever. Kind of holding that leverage over it. So the kid has to obey, because they love their sibling and they want or protect, or their mother or father. They want to protect them, so they don't do anything. So they're stuck and they're prisoners. And because they're so young, they can't rationalize it, saying, hey, if I'm going to do something and they're not going to do something to them, I'm going to do something to the sex trafficker. I'm going to get them caught, They're too young. They don't think that way. And it's just, it's a shame. And you think it's just like someone was saying is, do you know, like this, I don't know the stats of it, but it's like the Super Bowl is one of the most traffic spots or times in the country.
It's absolutely one of the most concentrated, because the Super Bowl, whether or not they're actually attending the game, there's the atmosphere, there's the regalia, everything's going on. So you have these very wealthy people coming into town that want to be entertained, and so people figured a way that they can entertain them. Also, because there's such an influx of tourism and people coming in for the game, for everything around it, that it's very easy to get lost in plain sight and just move people around back and forth. And to your point, there's such a manipulation there that no one knows who they can go to say, hey, this is not right. And it's very similar to in the 1800s with slavery. The slaves that wanted to leave the plantation, they were afraid to, because they had people that they cared about that would be left on the plantation who would be made an example out of. They'd have kids that would be sold if they tried to leave, and not to mention the physical abuse they had to go through. So it's such an evil. And as much as we want to hate the slave owners, the traffickers, it's not them that we need to really be against. It's the spiritual aspect, because there is an enemy that wants to ruin innocence, that wants to hurt, kill, and destroy. And that's what the enemy is doing through trafficking, by creating this very appetizing fruit that seems harmless. Oh, sure, yeah, we'll just hire a prostitute for the night. It'll be fun. It's a guy's night. Let's do it. Or even we'll watch a movie that features women and think that, oh, they're just actresses. Yeah, there are a lot of actresses, but there are also a lot who are being forced to do it. And so it's a $150 billion industry. And anytime that you hire a prostitute, anytime that you rent an adult film, if you will, when you go to a gentleman's club, you're feeding into this industry, and you cannot discern, because you're already in the darkness. You can't discern which ones are there of their own free will. So you're participating in slavery, whether or not the people you're actually viewing or commercing with are slaves themselves, but you're part of a slave industry.
Right. It's just, I don't know. It's disgusting. It's just, I don't remember the first time I ever heard about sex trafficking. I know someone down south, there was a group of at a coliseum, they would meet together once a year and stuff like that. I don't even remember what it was called. So there was probably around the 2010, 15 or something like that. That was the first time I ever heard of anything to deal with sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. And it's just recently we've been doing, as I said, between myself and then the TV show station I work for, they also do a lot on it. And we've got people that are constantly around the world trying to stop this from happening. But you're right. If you partake in it, by watching it or being in it of some sort, whether it is if they're not sex trafficked, but still you're supporting the industry and enabling everybody to keep sex trafficking going compared to trying to destroy it, So, right. So what are some of the ways you think that people fall into that trap? I mean, of being sex trafficked. Are they kidnapped? Are they persuaded? What do you think is happening?
Now, a lot of people will think of the Taken movies as like, oh, that's how it happens. It does happen that way, but primarily, if you look at the movie Sound of Freedom, a lot of it happens that way, where somebody comes in, promises the sun, moon, and stars to people that are struggling, and they think, right, wow, this is a way out. And it's not just, kids and people from third world countries or impoverished countries. In America, a lot of it is, girls that are they're isolated. Maybe they're not fitting in with a crowd, and then somebody finds them online and starts saying, "Hey, you are so beautiful. Are you seeing?" And so these conversations start, and finally, these girls are getting the attention they think that they want, and so they're willing to ignore red flags. They're willing to do things where they'll meet somebody by themselves. So it's such a wide net of how they catch the people that end up getting trafficked. It's always through some sort of manipulation, offering something that they need. With some of the women that I've worked with, it starts with the parents selling their children for drugs. Others, it's a boyfriend who says, and that they claim to be a boyfriend. I love you, babe. I love you so much. We just need some more money for rent. My friend, he could use a good night. Why don't you, for a few $100? And then now that door has been opened, now the shame and the guilt is used against these women. And now it goes from, can you help my friend, to, hey, we really need more money. Why don't you go do this, that, and the other thing? And then it spirals out of control. So there are so many ways that it happens, because we were fighting against an enemy that's very crafty. He knew how to manipulate Eve and get her to take that forbidden fruit, and he's still manipulating Eve to this day, getting her to take the forbidden fruit. And it's a spiritual war, and it's a war that we as men of God have to fight. We have to put on the full armor of God and be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations and tell our fellow man that, no, don't partake. It is not a victimless crime to hire a prostitute or to watch an adult film. It's not victimless to go to a nightclub and watch women dance. All these things are evil, and you're participating in the darkness. And we have to stand as men, interceding that these women and these children, men that are being trafficked, get freed, but also that the addictions that men and women are suffering, that they're freed from those addictions, so they no longer become participants in that industry.
Right. What I'm thinking, there's two things I'm thinking of earlier in your conversation. We're talking about manipulation, and we've always said this: manipulation is witchcraft. Whether it's in a church environment for giving, or doing something like that, people where they're manipulating you, whether it's the world, it's still, the root is witchcraft, which is demonic. That's the first thing I think. The second thing is is the devil. His goal is to destroy. Well, going back to Moses and Jesus, what did they do? He killed the babies because he felt threatened. So it's what he did. He killed the babies. Well, they're still doing that, today.
Yeah.
But also the thing is, they're also changing the identity. And it's got worse. I mean, in today's society, people don't know. I was born a boy. Oh, well, am I a boy? Am I a girl? Am I it? The devil is saying, okay, if I can destroy their identity, then I can destroy their relationship with God, because they don't have an identity. They don't know who they are.
Right.
And they're trying to find who they are. I mean, how many teenagers, I've dealt with teenager guys and girls, that you deal with them and they don't know who they are yet. They're still finding themselves. They're still growing. They're maturing. Their hormones are changing. Their concepts of what they know is good and evil they're learning. They're maturing in their faith or whatever. Yeah. They're understanding their identity, who they are. I mean, because if we know who we are in Christ, then we have a tool and a weapon to fight the demonic forces.
Yeah.
And the devil is trying to destroy everybody's identity, and that's the biggest thing right now, where like people don't know who they are. Literally, they physically don't, and they're getting them at a young age now. That's a whole nother show about where they're being indoctrinated at kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, saying, "Well, you say you're a boy, but maybe you're a girl, maybe you're a cat. I don't know. I mean, it's got crazy.
Yeah."
I mean, it really has. But again, going back to the devil, he wants to destroy, whether if he can kill him in the womb or kill him, a year old or 2 years old. If he can't physically kill them, he's going to kill their dream and kill, who they are, their identity. And they're spending their whole life trying to figure out who they are. And that's what we have to do, is say, hey, you're a child. Whether, if you're a Christian or not Christian, you're still a child of God.
Yeah. You're made in his image.
You're made in his image. Some have accepted it, that you're a child of God, and some haven't yet, but they will. So there's a lot going on in this world and things like that. Because we talked about some of the things of way they're being trafficked and how they're getting caught and stuff. Not caught, but caught into it. What are some of the things that we can do today to fight against this system? Because it's a big battle here. We can do it spiritually, but in the physical world too. What some of the things we can do?
Yeah, I would just say the biggest way to get involved in combating against it is, if you see something, say something. There's the National Trafficking Hotline, which you can call and just report it. You can report it anonymously. If you see something that looks suspect, you see maybe a young Hispanic child with a older white guy, and you're like, that doesn't look right. This seems, or even if you see a change in behavior of a teenager that maybe is in your life, and you see suddenly they have a bunch of new clothes, but you know that their family doesn't have that available. They maybe have one, or maybe they have 2 or 3 cell phones, and you're like, that family doesn't believe in that sort of thing. The cell phones become basically the release like the anklet that sometimes parolees wear. That cell phone, the second or third cell phone, becomes a tracking device. So if you see something, say something, because in all honesty, as embarrassing as it may be, it's better to be wrong and report than to be wrong and not report. It's better to see something and say something and be wrong about it than to see something and dismiss it and then realize months or weeks later that you could have saved somebody. You could have helped somebody. So the biggest thing is don't necessarily go searching for it unless you're a trained law enforcement officer or you're with a group that's trained and knows how to go in. You're not a hero. But if you see something, and also trust the Holy Spirit, pray about it. And if you feel like the Lord is leading you to report something, get on the phone and report it. The National Trafficking Hotline takes millions of calls each year, and they vet them and see which calls are legit, and they pursue. And the last year they had data, they've seen that there's an actual increase during the pandemic. Why? Because everyone's locked away at home, desperate for socialization. And so now the traffickers have a captive audience to convince people like, hey, you're locked away. Why don't you come have some fun? And then that spirals out of control. So the biggest thing is obviously prayer. Second thing is don't be afraid to speak, because the people that are ensnared, they don't have a voice. They don't have the ability or the freedom to speak, but you do. So if you see it, say it.
Mm-hmm. I'm also, I was thinking of some stuff that was going on in people's lives and stuff like that, and one of the things I'm thinking of is people need to have their eyes open. It's in the negative sense, people they're woke, but they need to wake up. I mean, because they've gone walking around society with their eyes closed and or blinders on, that they actually don't see it. They're not looking for it. I mean, the analogy that just came to my head is kind of like when you buy a car. You buy a unique car that you love it. You love the color, the style, and stuff like that. You never see it. You buy it, and all of a sudden, you see them everywhere because your eyes were open to that car. So you see them. So let's pray that the people's eyes are open, that they can tell that, hey, that doesn't look right, or that phone situation doesn't look right, or this situation, that doesn't look right, and then report it, And I mean, and that's the biggest example. You were talking about the young Spanish girl with an older white guy. It just doesn't, I mean, it's a shame. Unfortunately, we get to that society because you never know the situation. It might be his granddaughter or something like that, and you just don't know. But we're in a society today that it happens. You have to be on the cautious side. So wrapping up here a little bit, how can people get a hold of you? If they wanted to talk to you, in your ministry, whether it's in the Improv Ministries of the comedy, or sex trafficking, or information, or how would you lead people to where to get a hold of you?
You can always shoot us an email, Improv Missionaries at giftsforglory.com, and that's gifts, the number 4, glory.com. And the other way is find us on Facebook, Improv Missionaries. I run the page, so if you ever have a question, you want to message us through the page, it'll come right to me into my phone. And we're available to help churches with information about how to recognize the signs of trafficking, how to get your church involved in being on the offensive to combat this slavery in our country and around the world. There's an organization called Operation Underground Railroad, which is where the Sound of Freedom movie was based on. Tim Ballard and his initial foray into trafficking. So there are a million and one ways to get involved, and it's just like anything else in faith. The harvest field is ripe. We just need more workers, and whatever God is calling you to, if you want to reach out and talk to us, we'd love to direct you wherever you can go. Also, because we are U.S. missionaries, we're relying on the church to help us travel and minister to people. We'll never ask the people that we serve to take care of us. We're relying on God and the body of Christ to make sure that we can travel and do that. And you can find that information on how to get involved at improvmissionaries.giftsforglory.com.
Okay. Also, we'll post that on the screen and also in the show notes. So, all right. Well, Dave, thanks very much for being on the show today. I appreciate it. And you gave us some good information and some places to start walking toward and stuff like that. So thanks again, Dave, for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Hey, everybody else, you listening and watching the Millennium Beat. I'm glad you're here. And we'll catch you next week with another show. Remember, we like to encourage the world one story at a time.
This has been a Millennium Beat LLC production. Views and opinions of the guest are not always the views and opinions of the Millennium Beat LLC. Check us out on social media, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and TikTok at the Millennium Beat, or on Twitter at Millennium_Beat. If you would like to partner with us to reach the world, go to our website for more information. You can go to themillenniumbeat.com or tmb2000.net. Your financial support is greatly appreciated. We couldn't do all we do without your support.
The Millennium Beat just updated our website from the ground up. Check it out at themillenniumbeat.com, or you can get there by using millenniumbeat.com or tmb2000.net, where you'll be redirected to the millenniumbeat.com's homepage. I want to thank Mass Inbound for their awesome work on our website. If you're looking for somebody to build your site, I recommend them. You can reach them at massinbound.com. That is massinbound.com. These are some of the things that you can find on our website. Homepage. You can watch our latest YouTube video or listen to our audio podcast. Also listed are some of the platforms our audio podcast is on. You'll find out when the next podcast will air and who the guest will be. On the top right, you will find 2 red buttons, Learn How to Help and Become a Guest. Under Learn How to Help, you can become a partner, sponsor, contributor, or contribute to the future Millennium Bus. You can give one-time or monthly recurring. The choice is yours. The other button is Be a Guest. Click it, go to the form, and fill it out, and we will get back to you. We would love to hear your story. Click the About Us drop-down where you'll find stats, where we are reaching people, and to find more information on our sponsors. Click on the podcast drop-down, then click on the Calendar tab, where it will tell you when the shows will air and who will be on them. Or if you need to know about any meetups of the Millennium Beat staff, partners, or listeners. Also, there might be on the calendar an event at which the Millennium Beat staff will be at. Click the Guest tab for all previous guests, links to their website, social media pages, and any store they might have. Click the Forms drop-down. There you'll find a release, Be a Guest, or Become a Sponsor form.